I'm not the only one talking about this, of course. It's so big and obvious a megatrend that it's subject to a lot of ink on a lot of different publications. But I do think that there's a tendency to underestimate this. And if you think about it, what precedent do we have for something like this? You have to go back 100 years to the previous big pandemic like this, and the world was completely different back then. So I don't have a hard economic trend with data to back up any kind of projection here, Elijah. But if I just think about human psychology and I think about people that I know, I think about, my own self, my family, like when London started opening up and Boris Johnson talked about reducing the restrictions in UK, I told it to my wife and she looks at me and says, "When are we going?" Right? That's just the instant response. And I think that's very human. And I think that will be multiplied across really the large chunks of the entire population of the world. This is a big, big deal. And I mean, just look at the trucker convoy in Canada that's become the horn blast heard around the world. There are now trucker protests in the US, in France, and even in Brussels. It's really quite phenomenal. So I can't give you a number here, like this is how much higher this is going to drive oil prices or how many points of GDP this is going to be. I just think that all investors should be aware of this as a big factor that I think could be a confounding variable. Like, for example, let's just take inflation. Everybody's talking about how base effects are going to make it harder for inflation to go higher in the near term. And I can see that. The big increases last year started really in April and then going forward. And we're getting close to that now, to where, that's going to have a negative impact on higher inflation numbers, if that's what you're looking for. But at the same time, you've got this great reopening. And if just about everybody who's put off a vacation is now going to want to take it, or put off business trips, they're now going to want to do that business. In my business, the kind of due diligence required to make great stock picks, I put a lot of that off. I've had to go with what I can see on the internet, and that's just not how I do things. I want to get my boots on the ground and proof a story before I invest in it. And the big mining companies, they need to do their due diligence before buying the little ones. M&A has been repressed for the last 2 years, which I see as a giant spring in that part of the business. And again, just think personally, how many people haven't gone to go see grandma for 2 years because they didn't want to kill her by bringing a germ with them?
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
I think those people are going to get in the car and go see grandma. So trains, planes, automobiles, it's all going to be, I think, a very big surge that has implications for energy prices, despite the new production supposedly ramping up. OPEC is failing to, I'm throwing a lot in here, but it's a big question, Elijah. OPEC is failing to meet its increased quotas, but it is increasing output. The U.S. is also supposedly ramping up its production again. So there's people making a near-term bear case for oil, but it could easily be completely swamped out by the great reopening. So once again, I'm sorry I don't have a hard number to give you. This is how much the great reopening is worth in increased oil prices. I don't have that. I don't think anybody could give you that, not realistically. But I think it is a serious factor that everybody should consider. And on the liberty side, I just got to say personally, I get some grief for this because people think I'm anti-medicine or anti-science or something. I don't mean that at all. But I'm actually very pleased to see just average people standing up and saying no to Big Brother in ways that we haven't seen for a long time, really since 9/11. Anybody in uniform became a hero, no matter what they said. And, for people have a right to stand up and protest. I don't know that they have rights to close down bridges and stop commerce, but people have a right to stand up and say, hey, this is what I believe in, and I want my freedom. People have every right to demand that. And I'm glad to see people doing that. I had feared that people had kind of had that whipped out of them. And so I'm kind of glad to see some let me not mince words. I am glad to see North Americans and people around the world showing some spine and telling Big Brother they've had enough. Well, on its own, I think the great reopening is bullish for just about everything. Now, if it causes inflation to surge despite the base effects coming into play, and the Fed panics and does one of these shock and awe moves people are talking about, So I think it's kind of silly to think of 50 basis points as shock and awe compared to 7.5% inflation or 9.7% producer price index that we just got out this morning. 50 basis points is peanuts, so I don't see that as shock and awe at all. But if the numbers keep coming in hot, the great reopening prevents the numbers from rolling over in the near term. I mean, there's a lot of people who are already saying we're at peak inflation. Actually, it's a rolling target. One of these moving goalpost things, Elijah, where there were people in December, mainstream economists, talking about peak inflation already.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.